Good morning YouTube, and welcome back to Retired for Life. So I've just started the heater up, and we're gonna get the chill off the shop and get back to work on the duck. I'd like to get all the edging and whatnot complete on it so that it's ready for assembly. So we're going to try to get that far. I still am going to have to make a trip into town to get the stains and the paints that I want for it, because I don't have anything of the right color. So I'm going to see if I can find some of the paints I need in a craft shop, because I don't need much, because obviously it's not a very big piece. So let's get on to getting all the edges and whatnot cleaned up on this and ready to go. Alright guys, I've got the smallest radius bit that I have in here, and these bits have got a little bearing on the top of them. So it's just a matter of pushing this up against the bearing and running it along. So you don't need the fence. So like I said, we're learning as we go here. So we're going to power this up and run through a test piece just to see how it looks. Well, I like that. That looks good. So I'm going to take all the wing pieces and put this radius on top and bottom, but not on the front and back. I've got to make sure I have a left and a right as well. Yeah, I like that. It gives it a little more of a finished look. Okay guys, so I have labeled these pieces. So I've got the head and the tail, and just to be sure, we'll put an arrow indicating up. Now the head piece is slightly smaller than our block, so I'm going to mark where it comes down to. And then I am going to drill a couple of holes in here for screws. And the tail does go all the way to the bottom. Now, unfortunately, I didn't notice that the head piece, even the original, is smaller than the block. So that's not a big deal, but if I would have noticed that, I would have made the head a little bit bigger. So we'll lay out for a couple of holes in here and get them drilled. I'm not going to use glue. This is just a dry fit. And we'll put a couple of screws into it to see how it looks. Now, pine is pretty tricky stuff to work with. It will split very easily. So that's why I have drilled these holes for clearance for my wood screws and countersunk them just a little bit, because the screws will do some of their own countersinking in this wood. But part of what I want to do here is, just with screws that barely come through, I'm going to attach the tail and the head, and that's going to give me a marked location here. And then I am going to put a pilot hole down through here, again to make sure that I'm not putting too much pressure in the wood to cause it to split. So that looks pretty good. The other thing too is a lot of the holding power is going to come from the glue that I put down inside here. Alright, let's take our screws out and see what we've got. Yeah, that worked very nicely. So I'll do that with the tail, and then put a put this back in the vise and drill these out a bit. So there is the duck body. So I've got to do the same thing to the base here. I'm going to put a couple of screws in the base at either end to fasten these down. So I'll have to locate my screws, drill down through, and do the pilot hole into the end plate for the screws. And then I have to configure the bottom board, because that board is smaller than the others, because it has to kind of get around the corner here. So I've got to figure out what that angle is going to be to put on that board. Alright, we'll get these laid out and actually screwed down into place, and then we'll start fooling around with the bottom board. I think it's going to look pretty good. Alright, I've got my pilot holes, or clearance holes, through my base here. And to hold the base square, I've got an old angle plate here back from my machining days that I made just out of a piece of angle iron, and it works very nicely. So make sure I've got the head here. Now this is the same width as my plate, so that's why I'm using this angle bracket with the bottom plate right down against the bench. Then I can just sit this piece down all the way against the bench and put my screws in to mark the screw locations, and that will automatically put the head and tail plates in the right position. Alright, we'll mark these with the screws and then do a little pilot hole just like we did with the head. So this is actually starting to look like something. Yes, I like it. Now a lot of the strength back and forth on this will come from the wings when they're fastened in place, because they're going to be fastened across here, which will give it a lot of extra support. So the next thing I've got to do is figure out the positioning and maybe the angle that I want to cut on here to give me a nice fit on the bottom wing. So the bottom wing is the shortest of them. yes, that's these. So there's my left and right wings. I want to be able to put a couple of screws up into this bottom wing to help really reinforce the bottom of it. So I'm going to figure out the angle on here to get this wing to sit flat against the base. That will just be kind of a process of elimination cuts until we get the angle that we want. Now that wasn't done on this, but like I say, I want this one to be a little stronger. So we'll see what we can figure out, set up the table saw, and take the first couple of swipes at this. Alright, well there's the perfect fit, I think, for that. So I set my fence at 1 inch and my angle at 30 degrees. And that piece fits down in there very nicely, nice and flat against the bottom. So we'll do the same thing to the piece on the other side. Now that the fence is set, it'll be easy. Just put a reference mark on here to make sure I'm cutting on the right side. The other thing you want to watch for is make sure you're cutting this angle on your short side. You don't want to cut it on the top of your wing, or you're going to change the length of your wing because of the angle there. Okay, that's starting to look pretty good. And that one. Now the top one I'm going to have to cut off a little bit, but I'll cut it square and take about a ½ inch off. Otherwise it's going to close in our opening. So that looks pretty good. And these will be held on with just one screw going through the middle here. Well, let's figure out how much we have to cut off of this top wing, or top feather to the wing. Alright, so the top feather for the wing, we're going to take it from 1 3/4 down to 1 1/8, and we'll see how that looks. And again, you don't want to change the length of your wing, so when you're trimming it off, make sure you trim off of the short side, and then I'll have to cut the radius in again. Alright, that top one I said 1 1/8. It could probably have stood to be 1 1/4 actually. I am going to have to get back into knowing how to do CAD drawings. I used to use a program called TurboCAD at work, which I was reasonably competent with, and it would be nice to be able to do these things and make drawings of them and share them with anybody who's interested in it. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's get the other side cut and ready to go, and then we can start doing our pilot holes and fastening these into place. Alright, there we are, guys. Dry fitting is complete. So you set your potted plant down into there. I like it. I think it's pretty cute. So it all has to come apart and be finished sanded, stained and painted, but that looks good. I'm quite pleased with that. I hope Donna enjoys it. It should be quite fun for her. Replace the remnants of the old one that she really seemed to like. The one other little detail I want to do is I'm going to put an eyes on it, and to do that I'm going to drill a hole right through for a 1/4-inch dowel, and I'm going to stick a dowel through round the ends of the dowel on both sides so it's just barely sticking up above the surface, and have them painted a shiny black. So that'll give it kind of a, I think, a neat view of the eyes. But I'll show it to you guys when it's all done. So for now, that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys have got any comments or suggestions or anything like that, I'd love to hear them. And please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you out on the trails the next time.